Hi, I'm James Matthews, Director of Wealth Management. I want to thank you for your interest in pursuing a career as a financial advisor with Consolidated Planning. In this video, we'll walk through a real client planning case. We'll highlight how our philosophy of financial organization, protection, and an extra emphasis on cash flow helps our clients achieve financial security. Our goal is to help our clients be better protected and better savers so they're prepared for whatever comes next in life. We'll review how being planning process-based allows us to be even-handed towards the integration of protection and investments, and delivered in a way that's consultative and not product-driven. So with those things in mind, let's dive in. We begin with a look at our financial planning process. We believe in being process-based, and that clients feel more confident in working with us as professionals when we can clearly show that there's a process that will follow. We begin with a client's goals and concerns so that we truly understand the things that they're trying to accomplish and the things that matter to them. And then we help them get financially organized by collecting and capturing their data in our proprietary planning software, the Living Balance Sheet. Then we move into a strategy phase where we take a look at their protection as well as their cash flow to make sure that they're not exposed to any particular threats, as well as that they're saving enough money in the right places on their balance sheet. We also will do an analysis of any investments they may have, and then we'll give them recommendations to help close up any gaps and to move them in the direction of achieving their financial goals. We'll then review periodically as time goes on and as their life changes to make sure that the advice we've given them still is in their best interest and to see what other opportunities there are where we may be able to provide additional guidance. So now we'll move on and take a look at the Living Balance Sheet and how these things are applied in a planning case. It's not uncommon to find a client looking much like this person on the screen when we arrive on the scene. They likely have already taken some steps towards accomplishing some of their financial goals, but they have lots of confusion over all of the different options that they have. It's not at all unusual for somebody to be financially disorganized, and from that disorganization comes a lack of prioritization. It's hard to know which steps to put in what order when everything feels like it's tied for first place. Moreover, traditional financial planning has really focused on the steps in a different order than we have found to be optimal. It's not at all unusual for step 1 to be recommended paying off all of short-term debt, with step 2 being establishing an emergency fund, then focusing on savings rate, and perhaps getting to protection at that point, if ever. What we have found, though, if a client approaches things in that manner, is that the issues on the right-hand side of the screen really are never addressed. And more often, clients oscillate back and forth between several of these without ever making any real progress. What we know to be true, however, is that if a client simply focuses on protection first, because anything could happen between now and the future that could prevent them from then having the ability to save money. So if they protect first and then focus on becoming a world-class saver, which we would consider saving somewhere between 15 to 20% of income, and doing so in the right places on their balance sheet, doing so in a way that helps improve their liquidity so they have access to resources for life events, and only then focus on repaying debt. Because if it's handled in that manner, we're left with this place of confidence, with clarity, and a position of financial balance. And this is what I think all clients truly want in their life. They want to feel like that they're balanced and that they have a strategy that they're clearly able to follow. As we look at a planning case in more detail, let's start by taking a look at our clients, John and Jane, and their Living Balance Sheet dashboard. John and Jane are mid-30s. They have 2 small children. They have been working with Jane's mother's financial advisor for the last few years after they had received an inheritance that was invested on their behalf. But other than that, they haven't really been receiving much advice from Jane's mother's advisor. And so we can see as we've gathered their data, if we look at the Living Balance Sheet, a couple things are important to point out. First and foremost, in the middle of the page, we see a traditional balance sheet and a total of net worth, right? Subtracting liabilities from assets. We also see this foundational layer of cash flow across the bottom, as well as this roof of protection over the top. As we mentioned earlier, we feel that cash flow is very important, and we spend a lot of time here with clients because this is where financial decisions largely get made, as well as in this area of protection, because both the cash flow that a client has coming in and out of their world, as well as the assets that are on their balance sheet, are both important and they're worth protecting. As a result, our goal is to help our clients be optimally protected and be saving enough money in the right places on their balance sheet while minimizing the effects of debt and taxes along the way. John and Janie have shared with us that they have some goals and concerns that matter to them. They want to pay for their children to go to college. They'd like to upgrade their house. They'd like to retire when they're 62 and move to Hilton Head and have their student debt paid off within 5 years. So pretty typical goals. And it's important for John and Jane to understand that the value of their income today is their most important financial asset. And therefore, we need to start with protection to make sure that they have the right protections in place so that they're able to then do the savings that's going to be necessary for them to accomplish their goals. So we'll start by taking a look at their protection overview. And in this protection conversation, help them see where they stack up in terms of protection in the different areas where things could potentially disrupt their abilities to earn an income or, more importantly, be saving money onto their balance sheet. So the goal here is to have every client either all optimal, everything green, or taking proactive steps towards moving in this direction. So in John and Jane's case, we can see that there's some areas for improvement. It's clear that they need to focus on getting some estate documents in place. We may refer them to an attorney to help with that, as well as taking a look at the amounts of life and disability insurance that they have. So as part of this protection conversation, we may suggest that they go into underwriting to see what's available and what the cost might be. From there, then, we would focus on cash flow and really helping John and Jane understand what's coming in and out of their financial world every month and every year so that they can focus on being a better saver. I think most people instinctively want to be better savers, and they really don't know how. Much of the traditional financial advice out there has really focused on cutting spending rather than looking for inefficiencies in their financial world. And so we're very good at helping clients find ways to be more efficient with their spending and savings habits without reducing their lifestyle. So to that point, if we look at cash flow, many clients approach cash flow in the opposite order of what's optimal. Clients tend to spend on their lifestyle first. They pay their debt and their taxes because they have to. If they're typical, they might be saving somewhere around 5% or so of their income. That's about the national average, and it looks like John and Jane are no different. And they've taken the Geico approach to purchasing insurance. They're saving 15% in 15 minutes, and they're waiting for their paycheck to show up in 2 weeks to repeat the process. And so it's our goal for every client, again, to help them become a better saver. And we do that by helping them shift their focus and shift the order of priority. That if they understand their earnings and their cash flow that's coming in every year and understand that that's their most valuable asset, then we want to help them protect that cash flow with the best possible coverage at the lowest possible costs. Then we want to help them try to increase their savings, again, through improved efficiency, so that they are saving at a world-class level of 15 to 20% of their income, and doing that in a way that minimizes debt and taxes, so that whatever is left for lifestyle, they can simply go spend on their life, and they don't really have to worry about particularly restrictive budgeting. So at this point in the conversation, we would take a look at this with John and Jane and say, okay, they have $78,000 a year left after they've addressed these other objectives. And so if we were to just divide this by 12, we may say that John and Jane has somewhere between $6,000 and $7,000 a month left over after they've paid their mortgage, after they've paid for their protection costs, they've saved in their retirement accounts, and so on. What often happens is a client feels that that number is too high, and so we would assign a worksheet for them to complete, going backwards and looking at several months' worth of expenses. And so that's what we've done here, and John and Jane have provided us with that level of detail. So if we look at their cash flow in an expanded view, we can see that John and Jane have come back and told us that really their living expenses are only about $58,000 a year, not the $78,000 a year that we just saw. And so this tells us that there's almost $20,000 a year of cash flow in John and Jane's world that's unaccounted for. We don't know where it is. And what we want to try to help them understand and agree to at this point is that there's a better use for this cash flow, nearly $20,000 a year, than I don't know. Returning to John and Jane's dashboard, it's important to point out that they may not be comfortable committing all of that additional cash flow we've identified to future savings. That's okay. They may have expenses they forgot to include in their monthly worksheet, or they may have expenses that are coming up that they want to make sure that they keep some resources available for. But like many people, they've been sort of saving by virtue of not spending, meaning that they're spending less on a monthly basis than they're earning, but it's just piling up in their bank account without any real process behind it. We can also show them in our workflow a tool that enables us to point out other places where we can help recapture cash flow through simple inefficiencies in their current budgeting. For example, in their case, their youngest child is about to enter school, so their daycare expenses can be recaptured. They're currently already saving in their retirement accounts, of course, and they felt comfortable committing $1,000 a month of the $18,000 a year roughly that we identified that was just piling up in the bank with no real purpose. We also were able to find some inefficiencies in their insurance costs by increasing deductibles in their auto insurance policies, as well as helping them enter into an income-based repayment plan for their student loans to help reduce the cost of those student loans on a monthly basis. By doing that, we were able to help them find an additional $16,000 a year that they were comfortable saving. So when we found John and Jane, they were only saving about 5% of their income into their retirement accounts at work, but now we've identified that there's about $2,000 a month in total that they're able to put to work towards their financial objectives. It's not enough to just point out to John and Jane that they have additional resources available to save, but we now need to actually show them where to save those dollars onto their balance sheet to get the highest and best use out of them. And not just where to save, but how to go about it. Oftentimes, clients find it difficult to proactively set aside money to save. They understand the importance of it, but behavior gets in the way, right? We're busy every month, our checking accounts are chaos, and it can be very difficult to proactively set aside funds for our financial goals. Thankfully, we have a system in place to help do this and make it easy for clients. If we take a look at our workflow, this conversation around cash flow allocation is similar to one we might have around investment allocation when talking about allocating investments across different types of asset classes like stocks or bonds. Here we're talking about where to allocate a client's future savings onto their balance sheet in support of their particular financial goals and objectives, with an eye towards balance. So here we can see the $2,000 a month that John and Jane have committed to saving. Some of these dollars are going to be directed towards their long-term objectives like retirement, and we believe typically that the longest term accounts should have the riskiest investments, like your growth stocks, for example. More intermediate term goals may be in a non-qualified or a taxable investment account, and in a portfolio of stocks and bonds with maybe more of an income focus or a balanced focus. And lastly, we may have some dollars directed towards fixed income to continue to build liquidity on the balance sheet for life events or for opportunities. So we can see a sample allocation we've built here for John and Jane, and the execution of this would look something like this. Again, most clients start out with their incomes coming into the household checking account each month, and they have their expenses going back out. Oftentimes, clients stop here. They may be making contributions to their retirement accounts automatically off the top, simply because it's automated. It comes out of their paycheck before they even receive the deposit. We want to introduce that same concept to help clients really separate what they're going to be saving from their monthly operating account. And we do that using something we refer to as a wealth building account. A wealth building account can be any type of liquid savings account, money market account, brokerage account, anything separate from the client's checking account that's not accessible by debit card. We use this as a vessel to just collect a client's committed monthly savings so that it can then be directed towards its ultimate destination, whether that be other investments or other things they may be utilizing to help build their balance sheet and accomplish their financial goals. This process is very important because it separates the idea of saving, which is setting aside the money, from investing, which is ultimately where it's going to go, and helps reduce the number of decisions that a client needs to make beyond simply what they're going to be saving on a monthly basis. At this point, we're ready to help John and Jane take action on our recommendation. We would help them establish a wealth building account. We may use a brokerage money market account through Park Avenue Securities if properly licensed to open an account. If not, then they could use any online high yield savings account or other type of liquid account that they wanted to. Once that's happened and once they've funded the account for a period of time, we'd be ready to start then setting up the investment piece that's mentioned here. So we could just establish a non-qualified taxable investment account for them and help them set up an investment allocation in a managed portfolio of stocks and bonds so that they were able to be directing that savings as shown here. And that might look something like this, where we would use a portfolio of exchange-traded funds, globally diversified, low-cost stocks and bonds that would help them continue to build and create wealth through those monthly cash flows. And we could stop right there. But in this particular case, because John and Jane also have a need for additional protection, as we saw at the beginning of this video, then we may be able to help improve the efficiency of how this plan comes together by taking a look at adding whole life insurance. As you may know, whole life insurance is a safe asset. It provides liquidity. It provides a guaranteed death benefit for the rest of life. And it enables us over time to make different financial decisions when it's a part of a comprehensive plan. So if we take a look at what that might look like, we could take a look at two different scenarios. One is we could potentially have additional term coverage that's added, right? So taking an additional $475,000 of term and simply saving our $7,200 that we've committed into a fixed income bucket. And in doing that, alternately, we could instead have permanent coverage of roughly the same amount. And instead of saving the $7,200 into the fixed income, we simply use that $7,200 to pay for the whole life insurance. And if we take a look at what this looks like from a cash flow perspective, in our current scenario, we would be directing the term cost into our protection bucket to pay for our term insurance. We would then be directing our $7,200 a year into our asset bucket, into our fixed income. That fixed income is going to earn interest, which of course in a taxable account is taxable. So John and Jane are going to receive a 1099 every year and have to pay taxes on that interest each year. And if we just carry that out between now and her retirement age, if we go out 30 years, we see that happen year after year after year. And at the end of 30 years, Jane's left with no more life insurance because she made it to the end of the term and she's still living. Her fixed income bucket grew to about $420,000. And there was a cumulative cash flow of about $284,000 between taxes plus funding to make all of that happen. Let's take a look at our alternate scenario. If we did the same things using the same dollars and just simply redirect them differently, what does that do to our outcome? So again, instead of $7,200 going to fixed income, what if we just allowed that to pay for an equivalent amount of permanent insurance coverage? We would then direct the cost savings that we see here, which is taxes we didn't have to pay because we didn't have taxable fixed income earning interest, but also the term premiums that we didn't have to pay to buy the life insurance. Those can be recaptured and reinvested on the balance sheet at the highest return available. And as a result, there's no tax that's due each year. Again, take that out 30 years to retirement, and where do we end up? We have the exact same cash flows, simply redirected differently onto the balance sheet. But instead of no life insurance benefit, we now see that Jane still has almost $800,000 of death benefit available that she'll carry with her into retirement. We have a slightly smaller asset bucket, but we also now have cash value as part of that life insurance policy that's accumulated. So if we take a look at this in a visual sense and compare, where we end up is, from a living perspective, the living benefit is higher, right? She has a higher net value at retirement in our scenario. She has a higher and growing death benefit all along the way, and a higher value at death, because we know in this following year, the term death benefit's going to go away, right? So if we go back and add this together with the rest of their investment strategy that we just recommended, and then take a look at where they land when they are ready to step off into retirement, what we find is their current scenario leaves them a lower lifetime value and a lower asset value at death than our alternate scenario. And so we may just ask John and Jane, knowing this and knowing that we want to be approaching a integrated investment and protection strategy, which one of these two scenarios makes more sense to you? More often than not, they're going to select the alternate strategy because they can see it's better in every way. For the same exact cash flow, they can have a higher asset value at retirement and a safer strategy stepping off into retirement with additional death benefit and cash values available. So this just illustrates how we can integrate protection with investments to engineer a better outcome for a client using the exact same cash flow that we've identified through the planning process, and showing a client how we can help them put that cash flow to its highest and best use. So as you think about working with your own clients, I'd like you to think about this particular case and think of people who you may know who look like this. And now that you have a better understanding of how you may be able to help these folks as an advisor at Consolidated Planning, hopefully it will help you understand the value of the work that we do and the value that you can potentially bring to all of your future clients. So I hope this video was helpful, and I look forward to the opportunity to speak with you in detail about this in person at some point in the future, and best wishes with all of your future success.